on today's episode.
He's won a Grammy, produced a massively successful film, and founded the global juggernaut Priceline.com. Uber entrepreneur Jeff Hoffman.
What people care about is self-determination. What people want is to design their own future. Entrepreneurship is the shovel you use to dig a path to a brighter future.
It really is, at the end of the day, just a recognition of the fundamental nature of being a human.
There is no shame in life in making money. The shame in life is not using it to help others.
It's not enough to know why you do. It's not even enough to know what you do. You need to know how you're going to execute.
It's time to go inside Quest with host Tom Bilyeu, president and co-founder of the second fastest growing private company in America. And now, he's uncovering the universal principles of success.
I can tell you right now what principle number one is: follow your passion.
Inside Quest starts right now.
Hey everybody, and welcome to Inside Quest. We are the training partner for your mind. Our goal is to bring on amazing people who will help bulk up our brains. And if you're looking to slather on the gray matter, there's no better guest than the man joining us today. He is someone who knows the value of hard work, but also the value of wonder and play. An inquisitive mind and a willingness to systematically step outside of his comfort zone are why he's had a legendary career as an entrepreneur. A millionaire before his 30th birthday, he is living proof that when you chase excellence rather than money, success comes, and in many forms. A man who truly knows his golden purpose, he has earned accolades in a freakishly wide variety of areas. He's won a Grammy, produced the massively successful film Cabin Fever, against all odds, and founded several successful companies, including the global juggernaut Priceline.com. He's the reason you can print your boarding pass at a kiosk instead of standing in line. We all own for that one. And he's hell-bent to help entrepreneurs around the globe build a better world. Please help me in welcoming Uber entrepreneur, author, philanthropist, and recipient of 2010's Lifetime Achievement Award in Entrepreneurship and Hall of Fame for Entrepreneurs inductee, Jeff Hoffman. Jeff, thank you so much for joining us, man. It is an absolute pleasure to have you on the show today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely.
And hi, Mom. I know I make sure I said that
That's
too.
my mom too.
Yes,
what a shock.
I'm pretty sure
Little
she's
did I know.
everyone's mom now.
Yeah, this is going to be a more interesting interview than I ever expected. I had no idea that we shared so much.
We'll talk later.
Yeah. It's actually funny because reading your the interview that we did with you beforehand that just gave me a wealth of information about you. There were a ton of quotes that really resonated and felt like things that I wish I had thought of myself. They just really spoke to sort of the notions forming in my own mind. So if it's okay, I actually want to start with a quote of yours, which I think is really powerful. You said, "My only mission is to spread self-determination. I want people to believe that they are masters of their own destiny. I want them to know it's up to them to chart their own future." When did you come to that realization, and what does that mean to you to be the master of your own destiny?
So I got to tell you a story that really drove this home for me. I made a commitment to giving back, as you have, right? And by whatever way you can. In my case, that I thought maybe I could mentor people, right? I've fallen in every pothole there is 3 times, so it seems to me I should tell other people, don't step there, okay? And I wish someone had told me that. So in this process, I signed up to do a lot of volunteer work, working with the White House, the United Nations, the State Department. So this was a White House trip. Okay. It was after Obama's Cairo speech in 2009, where he said post-revolution to the Arab Spring countries, we'll help you, right? Well, what does help you mean? Help you means rebuild economies, take financial control of your country, etc. So I was one of the ones that got sent over there to actually do the work. Right. I went to Egypt post-revolution. It turned out it was not post-revolution. We all thought it was. But my assignment was teach people entrepreneurship, right? And I was walking down the street. I literally felt like I was pushing a cart, like a peddler, saying, entrepreneurship, come and get some. Who wants entrepreneurship? And nobody wanted any. And I thought, what am I doing wrong? And I sort of felt like, at the time, Egyptians were saying, dodging bullets and saying, could you call us back after the revolution? We're busy right now. And I felt like, what am I missing? Because I'm an entrepreneur. That seems like everybody should want that thing. And here's what I missed. I parked my figurative cart to the side, and I went to a young Egyptian girl, and I said, all right, I give up. I won't try to sell you entrepreneurship. And I said, just tell me about your life right now. So she walked me down to Tahrir Square, which is where the revolution happened. And there was concrete, and she said, right here. And I said, right here, what? And she said, right here is where I held my brother while he bled to death the night of the revolution. And my heart stopped. And she said, oh, Mr. Hoffman, can I show you my startup idea? And I said, I don't understand. How did you go from that, holding your brother in your arms while he bled to death, to this? And she said, you don't understand. That's the reason we did this. She said, the reason we risked our lives and my brother gave his is so that we could build the new Egypt. And I started thinking, I said, what does that mean to you? And she started telling me, I said, what future do you want? What future do you want for your kids? And when she explained that to me, I realized there's a really good tool you can use to design your future. It's called entrepreneurship. So when I went back to the State Department and the White House, and I said, guys, we're selling the wrong thing. What people care about is self-determination. What people want is to design their own future. Entrepreneurship, I'll tell you what I wrote. I wrote it on the wall of the State Department. I wrote, entrepreneurship is the shovel you use to dig a path to a brighter future. So that's when I realized that teaching people how to help themselves is all that entrepreneurship really is. It's self-determination, not business. She didn't care about money. She didn't care about business. She cared about a future, an Egypt where her children could grow up safely. That is something we can all get behind. And when it occurred to me that what people want to do is just own their future, then I understood.
That's really powerful. So one thing that as generations have evolved that's become really apparent to me is as a child of the 80s, it really was about the accumulation of wealth. That's what you fantasized about. And it was fantasies of fast cars, big houses, and that dream is now morphing into something entirely more powerful, where people realize that wealth is simply access to resources, but those resources have to be aimed at something, and that something that you aim the resources at is the real juice. The notion of the shovel, it's a metaphor you use a lot in your talks, and I found it incredibly powerful. Why do you think that so few people find themselves sort of innately in a position to recognize that what they need to do or acquire those shoveling skills? Because your entire endeavor, the very reason you needed to go to Egypt, the very reason that we do this show is because so few people understand how to wield that shovel. Why do we find ourselves in that situation?
So, great question. And by the way, that is the reason I'm here today. And I applaud your efforts in this show, because part of the problem, I'll be honest, especially in our culture in the US, the last 3 years, I've been on a world tour just to sort of see what people are doing. How are people achieving their dreams around the world? But the problem here, and again, it's so commendable that you guys are doing this to break that cycle, is the message. I always tell people, I call it the American Idol nation. The old way was you work really hard. In fact, think of the music example. You play in shady nightclubs night after night with people who aren't even listening. You rehearse all day long, right, in your basement. Right. The old model was hard work, right? The new model is I'll just stand in line at an audition for American Idol and maybe someone will spot me, right? It's the same thing that drives me nuts that we've evolved to the every kid gets a trophy nation. That's the worst thing you could possibly do to our children. Because what it teaches is you don't really have to try as hard as the kid that works hard. He stays, or she stays after practice, and she works all day in her game, and she gets the same trophy. That is not what we built this country on. We built this country on recognizing that if you work harder than everyone else, you achieve more than everyone else. That hard work pays. Right. That old adage. So we have these sort of social signals and media signals that maybe you'll just get discovered. Maybe you'll be nothing today, and tomorrow you'll be a reality TV star without ever having worked your way up through your acting chops. So I think there's a lot of messaging that doesn't help the case. And we tend to glorify sometimes the wrong stories, the lottery winner kind of stories. Mm. So I just think more media on picking up a shovel and digging. The stories of people who worked their way to their dreams, who didn't luck their way. Luck's a great thing. I'll take luck anytime it happens. But have you ever heard that saying, it seems the harder I work, the luckier I get, right? There's a reason for that. The more you're out there engaged in the world, the more chances there are that you'll stumble into something. Right. So I think that's a big piece of it. We need to keep telling the stories of the heroes that had a shovel when everybody else was standing in line hoping to get discovered. The people that were out there working really hard to make things happen.
All right, I want to push you a little bit harder on that, because one thing that you talk a lot about is, so I want to believe that anyone can be a self-determined human being, an entrepreneur. And I like that definition of an entrepreneur. That definition of entrepreneurship being sort of grabbing the shovel and digging something and creating this amazing path for them. What I'm trying to figure out is, you use the analogy of someone jumping off a cliff, and being an entrepreneur is about jumping off that cliff and building the airplane on the way down and being very comfortable with that. And that there are a lot of people who will never be an entrepreneur simply because they're not comfortable with that moment of risk. Why then, when you go to Egypt, are you filtering simply for the people who are willing to take that leap, or are you really offering a vision of entrepreneurship that anyone can utilize?
I think that's a great question. And in fact, that's sort of the question I get asked all the time: are entrepreneurs born or made?
Sure.
Right? Everybody wants to know that. And I think the answer to your question is both. You're definitely filtering for the leaders. Somebody asked me one day, and I remember I was sitting in a chair. Well, we were sitting in chairs, and one of the persons leaned back. And you know that moment when your chair's about to go and you're doing this thing, right? And you're not sure if you're going to fall or not fall? I turned to him and I said, I feel like that all the time. Okay? That's I actually like that feeling. I want my chair to be perpetually unsure whether it's going to stay up or not. I get that that's a DNA thing. Not everybody's there. So you filter for the leaders, but it's a really important question you asked. Because there's a lot of people that say, I don't want to sit in that chair, but I want to be there to help that person in that chair. And what that tells you is the most important thing that you choose in the world is not what you do, it's who you do it with. You choose people. I always tell people I've never chosen jobs. I've chosen people. I would come through life and say, whatever it is, I want to do something with Tom, and we'll figure out what we're going to do. I have a guy, he's a CPA and a lawyer, right? And while I go jump off the cliff, right, and try to build an airplane on the way down, not only would this guy never jump off the cliff, to your point, but he wouldn't even go near the mountain because I might slip on the way up, okay? He'll never leave the office, right? But here's the thing, figuratively, one day I jump off the cliff, and this time I look down and I forgot airplane parts. I don't even have tools this time, I really blew it, right? So I'm on the way down, plummeting to my death. Right. And I pick up my phone to say goodbye to all my friends. Sorry guys, it's been real, it's been a fun ride, right? And I called Glenn, just wanted to say goodbye, and he said, Jeff. And I said, what? And he said, reach behind you and pull the red string. I said, what's the red string? Glenn says, I knew you were going to do this, so I packed you a parachute. Okay? We need all different types of people. So if you're not that person that's going to be the entrepreneur that jumps off cliffs, join one. Find Tom, which you have, right? Find somebody that will take that risk and be on that team. We all can be part of an entrepreneurial solution. We just don't have to be the lead person.
All right, you brought something up, and I'm going to be entirely selfish for a minute, and I appreciate you bearing with me. You brought up my mom earlier, and that notion that you're saying about the team, we just had this conversation last night where I was saying you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And you know, one thing that when I think about what you're doing with Unreasonable at Sea, which we'll get into and you can explain to people exactly what that is, but the reason I think that's so powerful and that you're touring all over the world helping people rise up and be an entrepreneur is my mom should be embodying the principles of an entrepreneur, even though being a true entrepreneur from a business perspective is not interesting to her, right? She doesn't want to take that leap. She has no interest in building the airplane on the way down, but she does want to live this life to the fullest. And there are principles that, the reason that the principles of entrepreneurship work are because they're the principles that acknowledge the human condition and the ability to rally a team of people around you to a common mission, all the things that have made us successful over the years, just applied to economic principles. But it really is, at the end of the day, just a recognition of the fundamental nature of being a human. So one of them being, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So what are some of the key elements that you're trying to offer to people when you tour, whether they want to build a business or not, that people could employ in their day-to-day life?
Excellent question. And I need to, I want to tell you another story. Unfortunately, that's the way I learn, so that's the way I speak. When people tell me something, I say, for example. So you'll have to bear with me because that's the way I speak as well. This is when that average of those 5 people really became clear to me. I was in corporate America and I just couldn't do it. I just didn't like it, okay? And it's not a right or wrong, it's a DNA thing. It just did not work for me. It turns out, by the way, that I have like 27 DNA strands of sarcasm, and corporate America fails to value those. So I wasn't doing well. And I quit to go be an entrepreneur.
Right.
This guy, Charles was the highest ranking technical person at a technical company.
Right.
I was at an engineering company. Everybody wanted to be Charles. He was the model. If you do well enough, one day you can be Charles. Okay, and he'd been there forever. He was also the smartest person I've ever met. Charles called me into his office, said, have a seat. I sat down, he said, I hear you quit. I said, yes, sir, I did. And he said, because you think you're smarter than everyone else. I said, no, sir, never said that. And he said, you think you're smarter than me? I said, with all due respect, you're the smartest person I've ever met. And he said, so how is it this career is good enough for me, but it's not good enough for you? And I said, I never said that. And he said, what is it you're going to go do as an entrepreneur? I said, build things. And he said, quote, what do you think, you're going to redesign industries? And the embarrassing thing was, well, yeah, kind of. I did think that, but I was afraid to say that now, right? Because he was saying it with mocking me pretty much. And he said, doesn't matter anyway. And I said, why does it not matter anyway? And he said, because whatever you do in your life, you'll be a failure. And I said, sir? And he said, I'm going to tell you, there's 3 reasons, Jeff, why you'll never make it in the world. And I said, okay. And he said, so get comfortable. And I was like, okay. He said, you have no focus. He said, in my life, I've had to do sometimes this one little thing for like 3 years without touching anything else. He said, you work on a lot of different things. You're juggling multiple balls. You're moving different parts at the same time. Your complete lack of focus will make you a failure. And this is the smartest person I know telling me I'm the dumbest person he knows. Okay? And then he said, there's more. The second reason that you'll never amount to anything in life. He said, did your mother, when you were a child, ever tell you patience is a virtue? And I was thinking, yeah, like 400 times a day, but I'm not going to give him that, okay? He said, you're the most impatient person I've ever met. And he said, sometimes I have to wait things out for years to happen, and you don't get that, so you'll fail. And I started to get up, and he said, no, there's a third reason. And I was like, there was a Louisville Slugger in his office, and I was like, could you just beat me with the bat and get this over with so I could go? That'll probably hurt less, right? And then he said, the third reason you'll never make it in life is that you have no respect for authority. You think you're smarter than other people? You think you know a path that they don't? He said, leaders of industries built these industries. Who are you? And he said, your disrespect for authority and for trails blazed before you. And he said, so don't come crawling back to me and begging for your job because you'll fail at everything. So I got up and I went home, and I was really depressed. And I was thinking, the people around me, those 5 people, the guy I've always wanted to be, we all always want to be, right, just told me I'm a massive failure. That's pretty hard to take. So I was trying to get away from it, and I turned on sports. That's my escape, right? And I turned on sports, and there was a golfer. But I stopped in the channel because there was a baseball player I knew on there. The golfer lines up, puts the ball on the tee, drills it 250 yards down the fairway, perfect shot. And he hands the club to the baseball player. And he says, you do it. And the baseball player takes this horrible swing, and the ball goes off in the woods. And the golfer angrily grabs the club and says that you're a horrible golfer. Let me show you again. You're swinging the club like a baseball bat. So he drills another perfect shot, and he gives the baseball player the club again. And he swings, and this time it goes into the sand 40 yards away. And he angrily says, you're swinging the club like a baseball player, you're a horrible golfer. And what the baseball player said next completely changed my life. It was an epiphany moment. He said, with all due respect to the game of golf, I have won 2 World Series, 3 MVPs, and I make $24 million a year swinging the bat. He said, I'm pretty good with my swing right now. And I sat bolt upright, and I realized something. All my life, all I've ever wanted to do is play baseball, and everyone around me is a golfer, right? I was in Africa recently, and I saw that proverb on the wall that said, if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will think it's a failure, right? So what I realized is, I looked at the people around me, and I love my mom, who gives me advice all the time. But it turns out, as crazy as this may sound, my mom never built an internet company, okay? So yeah, Mom, I appreciate your advice. I learned to give her a hug and say, that's nice, Mom, okay? But until you built an internet company, I'll probably go on my own on this one. And I realize, if what you want to be as a baseball player and everyone around you is a golfer, meaning they're not the life you're trying to live, then maybe you should get someone else in your 5-person circle. So I went out in the community and said, I got to find a baseball player. So I looked and I said, I'll challenge everybody listening to do the same thing. Find someone in the world who you want your life to look like. Who is the person you say, I want to be her when I grow up, okay? And I realized that that was not the people in my circle. So I went out in my community and I found this guy. And I harassed and harassed him until I got a 30-minute coffee. And after we talked, which turned into 2.5 hours.
What was the first question you asked him?
I asked him about how he built his career. I said, what was your dream? What was your plan? And how'd you get here?
Right.
What were the things that most important things you did to get you where you are now? Because I want to wind up being you one day. And while we were talking at the end, he said, Jeff, you're going to be a brilliant entrepreneur, i.e. baseball player, not corporate guy. That was golf. And I said, why do you think that? And I kid you guys not, he said 3 reasons. And this time I wasn't going anywhere. I was pulling my chair up closer.
Right.
Tell me. And he said, first of all, you're a brilliant multitasker. At the beginning of a startup, Tom, you live this every day of your life. There's no you guys. We have to do this stuff ourselves. He said, you're a brilliant multitasker. You'll be good at startups. I said, oh, really? Because yesterday I was out of focus, right? And he said, second, you have this natural drive. Just get it done. And I said, funny, because yesterday that was impatience. Okay, as a matter of fact, as you know, building the amazing things you guys have done with Quest in only 4 years, you got to get it done, right? And I always look at people and say, can we not just do that now? Do we have to talk about it? We could finish doing it. I know that's your guys' culture from meeting a lot of your amazing people in this process, right? So that natural drive. And the third thing, he said, you seem to have no fear of trying things that nobody else had tried before you. And that was my disrespect for authority. I don't disrespect anybody. I'm just not sure anybody went left here, so I'm going to go left and see what it is. If I come back with arrows in my back, I was wrong. I'll pull them out, nurse my wounds, go cry to mom for a little bit, and try something differently.
So many concepts in that story that I absolutely love. I'm going to try and go through them one by one here. One, you've said before, I don't look at a door handle and assume that it's locked because nobody else has tried the handle, so I walk up and try that, and I thought that was absolutely brilliant, that notion of it's not disrespect for authority, it's just I'm going to approach things with wonder like a child, I'm going to try things, question things, and that's had great success for you. The very powerful concept, and I know we're going to go down a deep rabbit hole here on this one, of finding that thing that you can be the best in the world at, and that the most innovative people exist at the intersection of three things. And when I saw this in one of your articles, I memorized it so I could do it, but I won't do it as much justice as you. So if you could walk us through what those three things are.
Where did you find time to do all this homework, by the way?
My friend,
there's a teleprompter behind me. Is that what it is?
When I come across people like you, I go all in, trust me. Every article you've written, every speech you've given, there are nuggets of gold. Boys and girls, do yourself a favor, look this guy up. It's absolutely amazing. All you have to do is drop into YouTube, Jeff Hoffman, Priceline. You will get just a litany of amazing stuff, not the least of which is some cool stuff he's doing on Vimeo with the Unreasonable at Sea, which we're still going to talk about. But first, walk us through that golden triangle.
So, and thank you very much for the respect of listening to this stuff. I really appreciate it. As a big fan of you and what you guys do here.
Thank you.
I appreciate that very much. So you look back and you see all the places, your trail of blood, sweat, and tears, which there's no success story that didn't have one of those. There are no shortcuts. And you look back and you say, somewhere along the way, I know all the stuff I did wrong, you never forget those, but I must have done something right somewhere. Let's look backwards. I sold a company to a big Fortune 500 company, and my girl that ran HR for me all those years said, Jeff, check this out. She said, in all the years from the day you started that company to the day you sold it, nobody that worked for you ever quit. And I said, no way. We fired non-performers, but no one ever quit the whole time. Wow. So that was the day I said, then there's something we did right. Let's go backwards and ask people, why does no one, in fact, I called people and said, why don't you quit? And they're like, is this a problem? Do you want us to quit? I was like, no, I just don't get it. We must have stumbled into something right. And I try every time I get around successful people like yourself, every time I get a chance to learn from anybody, right? I do my sponging, try to soak it up and ask questions. And I've been very blessed to spend time with a lot of interesting business people, or just people in the world. And just recently, I did an event with Jack Welch from GE. I spent an afternoon with Steve Wynn in Las Vegas. I did I just was with the Dalai Lama, as random as that is. Wow. When you can learn from people, I always do that. So when I was looking back, I started saying, what's the common element of people that are really successful in anything? Sports, music, entertainment, your relationships, your family, whatever you do, what are the common elements of people that do things really, really well? And what I noticed, and we just call it the golden purpose. It's people that found their golden purpose. And to your point, the golden purpose is the intersection of three things. And the goal for all of us is to consciously keep sort of triangulating and trying to find the intersection of these three things. If you're not thinking about it, you might miss it. The first of the three things is, what is the thing you're best at? And I love to do this now. I challenge people to do this all the time. When you guys are done watching this show, text or email 10 people you know and ask them, what is the one thing in the world you think I'm best at? And you'll probably be shocked. It may not be the thing you actually do all day or the thing you knew that everybody valued, but it'll be something that tells you a lot about how you are perceived by the world and what you're good at. So finding the one thing you're best at, that's one. The second one is finding the thing you most love doing. Those aren't always the same, right? But what you're hoping for is to find a day and a place where they are. The thing that you most love doing happens to be the thing that you're best at. And the third part of that triangle, which you certainly did here with Quest, was find something the world values. When you find that intersection of those three things, those people hit, it's called the engineering term of resonant frequency. Every piston is pumping exactly right. And those people have amazing lives because they're in that intersection. They get success like Quest has found because they're doing something the world values, but they're contributing to that success because they're doing the thing they're really good at and they love doing it every day. I never consider it going to work. I can't wait to come work with the people and do the things we get to do every day. I know you have employees like that here.
You really exude that. And that's something we'll get to in a minute. But first, I've got to address Those watching at home, boys and girls, here's the thing. You're watching the show because you're trying to do something special with your life. You're trying to improve. You're trying to move forward. After the Keith Ferrazzi episode, which was very recently, if you haven't already watched it, watch it. That episode changed my life, and he got me to realize it's not enough to know why you do. It's not even enough to know what you do. You need to know how you're going to execute. The man just gave you an execution point. Text 10 people. Ask them, what is the thing that you're the best at? If you're trying to find this golden triangle, then here's the step. This is the first step. Do it. If you don't do it, unfortunately, it says something about your commitment to yourself. All right. Talk to us about Unreasonable at Sea for a second.
We have something called the Unreasonable Group that started with something called the Unreasonable Institute. It came from a George Bernard Shaw quote. And the quote says this, I'll paraphrase.
Sure.
A reasonable person adapts themselves to the world around them. That seems reasonable, right? An unreasonable person expects the world to adapt to what they're doing. Then here's the killer line. The third line says, therefore, all progress depends on unreasonable people. When we read that, we said that's absolutely right. If you're just going to get in line and follow the rest of the sheep, you will not change the world. If you're going to be the one that turns left and says, let's see what's over here, and you create something that has great value in the world, progress depends on unreasonable people. So that's why it's named that way. So therefore, the things we do are sometimes a little unreasonable. And the idea that Daniel had then, that we executed was, why are there a lot of people that don't get motivated to get up and do something, right? And that's why we talked about the every kid gets a trophy sort of laziness. I hate to use that word. But our thought was, what if you took today's young people who don't already know what they can and can't do, therefore everything's possible. So the experiment of Unreasonable at Sea was, let's chart a ship, sail around the world, literally, and bring young people from all over the world. They had to submit like a 3-minute video, say why you want to be on the ship, which keep that in mind because we're going to do it again, and put them on a ship and expose them to the world's problems. So the question was empathy. If I took you to a village in Africa and said, by the way, this is the way the rest of the world lives, not the way that we are so blessed to live right here in, in the States, wherever we live. If we put you in front of these problems, the question is, would you do something? If you saw the problem firsthand and stood there. The other thing that we were testing, that's empathy, was kind of the island effect. If I picked a bunch of you at random that don't know each other and put you all in front of a problem, would you form teams? Right? Well, this millennial generation, they quickly get over all the barriers of race, religion, gender, age, all those things. And they say, guys, what's your golden purpose? What's your golden talent? And let's just assemble a team and let's go do this thing. So we chartered the ship. We sailed around the world. We exposed people to problems, and they did amazing things. People were moved by the world's reality and said, I think I can fix that one, I'll take that one. And I could not be prouder of the results that were achieved.
All right, I got to jump in there because that notion, you said I became an entrepreneur not because I wanted to get rich, I became an entrepreneur because I wanted to fix the broken things that I came across. I love that. Like, that really gets me excited. And the reason it gets me excited is it taps into something so much more profound inside of us, that desire for community, to connect. We're such a social species. And you've got this vision of business that allows people to be both selfish in that they want to do something that they can feel good about and proud, and it makes them feel good, but also in a way that acknowledges that that can come from something that's community focused. So I want to talk about something that you're doing right now. It's community focused, absolutely brilliant, and I didn't even know it existed. And I know that this ties into some of what you're doing in film as well. But giveforward.com.
Yes.
Amazing. Tell us about how that started, why it's important to you, and how it sort of ties into that same thing with the Unreasonable.
And sure, that was a group of young people, again, that saw a problem that they wanted to fix. And, you know, my role initially as advisor to them, right, and mentor to help launch that thing. But it's a medical giving site. And the concept was, once again, seeing a wrong in the world and saying someone, by the way, I got to cut to this for a minute, because I have this board back in my office where I write the stuff that matters to me. And one of the things it says in big giant letters is, there is no they. Because one time I was watching TV, and there was a horrible thing. It was a shelter for battered women, and it was being closed. And all the women were in tears, and they were all headed to the streets. And the reporter said, where will you go? And the woman said, not back to the guy that broke my rib cage 3 times. And she said to the other woman, what about you? She said, I have young kids, and he said he'd kill me if I came back again. And she said, so what are you all going to do? And they said, hide in the streets. And I thought, wow, they should do something. And that's what we think when we see a problem, right? They should do something about that. And then I stopped and I thought, wait a minute, if everybody watching TV right now says they should do something, who's going to do it? Because there's no one left. The next day I went to my office and I wrote in giant letters, there is no they, right? And I said, it's us. If you see a problem, it's you. Don't wait for them to come along because they aren't behind you. You got to fix a problem in the world. And so that's sort of the impetus when these people saw this problem, which is when you have good health insurance and you're, let's say, dying of a cancer or a terminal disease, you got a fighting chance because you can pay for all the doctors. What these young people said to me one day is poor people die, right? The more money you have, the better health care you have. They said that just doesn't feel right to us. Then the answer is, then do something about it. So Ethan and Desiree, the names of the two founders of Give Forward, what they said was, well, let's take social media, right, and the power of that, and the community aspect of that, and let's take this medical problem, and let's build a way that if you in fact need a surgery to save your life, what Give Forward does is it creates the social media site, the website, and spiders out over all your social media and tells everybody, Tom's friend Jeff will die unless we can come up with $40,000 to pay for this surgery by this date. And so it's a medical fundraising, activate the community to save people's lives. But I'll tell you the thing I'm most proud of. It's not that. It's that the whole thing is Give Forward. And what we're finding, without even asking, is somebody that says I need $40,000 for my surgery and raises 60, they don't keep it, even though they're allowed to. What they do is they comb through the site and they say, Mary doesn't have much of a social network. She's only raised 10. She can have the rest of mine. So they push the money forward to somebody who's not doing well, and they're fundraising. And the first time I heard that, I was in tears. Complete strangers saying, here, just take the rest of mine. The community helped me, so now I'm the community and I'm going to help you. So that's what it does. And it's a great intersection of social media, of online commerce, and of communities that care.
Why is that important to you?
My best friend was a guy named Michael. And Michael made my day, brought the joy. Everything was more fun every day just because my best buddy was in it. Michael, by the way, was a world famous climber. He set all the world records for free soloing. If you look this guy up, Michael Reardon, you will see that no one else has ever climbed 1,000-foot cliffs with no ropes, no hooks, no safety equipment. And the reason he holds all the whole records, I'm guessing, is because everyone else is dead that tried that. I don't know if that's true, but who would do that? He never fell. Okay? But one day, and I can't get into the story because I won't be able to hold myself together, he drowned in the Irish Sea. And it was pretty tragic. And I was there to do the eulogy at the funeral. And I was sitting there, and I was listening to people talk about my best friend. And people were saying what they thought of him. So now I'm going to challenge all of our viewers and listeners. If this was your funeral today, write down what you think people would say. Because I was listening. And I said, that's not Michael. You guys got it wrong. That's not who he was. His whole life is ended, and everyone wrote him down wrong. His tombstone would be wrong. And it was bothering me. So I did the thing I'm challenging you to do. I went and I said, if today was my funeral, what would people say? And the result was a giant uh-oh. Wow, Jeff built some big companies, made a bunch of money, he had a sports car, whatever. Everything I could think of people might say was sorely disappointing, was an epic fail. If that's what you write on my tombstone, I wasted my whole time here. So then I'm going to challenge you to write down the second thing, which I challenge myself. What do you want people to say? What do you think people would say if it was your funeral today? What do you want them to say? And I wrote down what I wanted them to say. And I didn't want anyone to walk by my casket and say, man, you have a nice house, because I wasted my whole life. I didn't want to be judged by the number of deals or dollars I did. I wanted to be judged by the number of other people's lives I made better. So I said, if that's what you want to be judged by, then ask yourself the third question I'm going to challenge you guys with. What are you doing to achieve that? And I realized, what am I doing? I'm doing another deal. I'll make some more money. Did that make anyone's life better? No. What have I done to have a positive impact on as many people's lives as I can? So that's how that became important to me. I started to realize that the goal is to help everybody that wants to positively impact as many lives as they can. Let's enable them. Let's give them all shovels and teach them how to dig. I have now forgotten the original question because I went off rambling.
Don't worry. We've gotten
what did you actually ask me?
We've gotten onto something much more interesting, which I want to talk more about. So here's why people pursue wealth. It's awesome. So we'll start with that. It really is, resources are phenomenal. And it doesn't need to be the typical trappings that are sort of soulless. It can be better healthcare. It can be affording better diets, life experiences that you otherwise wouldn't have, whether that's trying to summit Mount Everest, which can take months, or whatever the case may be. But also, it's measurable. And when something becomes measurable, you can get the dopamine rush of, I have more of it, right? And when it's so ephemeral is to even be something like happiness, which is so difficult to quantify, you don't get that human desire for progress. And humans desire progress. Like, you want to know, am I getting better or not? You don't want to tread water. I'm not going to prognosticate as to why, it just is. Humans love that sense of moving forward in life. And I can tell you from an employee standpoint, an employee can come to you, and even if you don't give them more money, you can satisfy what they've walked into your office when they're asking for a raise or a promotion just by giving them a title that they perceive as being better. Nothing has changed. Literally nothing. I gave you a title.
They're listening, right?
Yeah, for sure. Because I want them to escape the matrix, right? I don't want, there's a great quote from Usual Suspects. The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he doesn't exist.
I love that
The only
quote.
trick that I use is I tell people everything. I tell them all the freaky shit that I'm thinking, why we do this, things like this. That I'll give you a title just to give you a sense of progress because I want you focused on the real mission instead of tripping yourself up over the internal emotional stuff, right? So there it is.
But you are absolutely right, and that makes perfect sense. You want people to clear their minds so that they can get done the stuff that really needs to get done, and whatever makes them feel better about it absolutely is important. I completely agree with that. And, like you said, one of the other things that's written on my board, it says there is no shame in life in making money. And underneath that I wrote, the shame in life is not using it to help others, right? So the more profitable Quest is, the more lives you can impact.
For sure.
It does matter. That measurement does count. I'm not afraid or ashamed of making money. Like I said, it enables us to impact more lives and to do more things. You can scale Quest because you're profitable. If you were not profitable, you couldn't deliver your mission. So I completely agree that it matters. And so whether we like it or not, there are scorecards. That is one of them, right? There are corporate and career types of scorecards that people measure their progress by. And making progress makes me feel better about getting up every morning.
Talk to me about the jam lady. So no one here is going to know what that means, but that story hit me. Microloans in general are something that I am moved by, but largely because of I'm having a hard time sort of wrapping my head around how I can tell if that's worth my efforts. And I'll give you an example why before you tell us that story.
Please.
So obviously here at Quest, mission-based company, our goal is to end metabolic disease. It's a global initiative. It's a massive undertaking. It's going to take a very long time, but I can measure the progress. And it's on a huge scale, right? As we put in, forget getting a product into the market. When we change a piece of equipment, or our head of sales, Yemeni, just really thinks outside the box in terms of how to structure a sales force to be a good partner, to walk in and ask, how can I be good for your business? Don't worry about us for a second. I know I have to make your business strong in order to impact the people that I'm trying to reach, so let's just worry about you. That's something anyone can take. There's nothing proprietary about it. I'll tell anybody who will listen what he's doing. Because we really want to solve that problem. So it's on this big scale, it's very quantifiable. Then when I think, okay, I could be putting my time and efforts into that, which echoes very largely, or I could put my time into this one person, it's highly tangible, it's a real woman, I can look into her eyes and know, holy hell, I made that person's life better. And it sort of ties into the Mother Teresa quote, no one will act for the many, but they'll act for the one. So help me understand how I should judge the value of my time.
You know the starfish story, right?
No.
It's after a big storm, and all the starfish have washed up on the beach, hundreds of them, and they're dying because they can't get back to the water. And a man is walking along looking at hundreds of dying starfish, and a little girl comes along, picks up a starfish, holds it up, says something to it, and throws it in the ocean. Then she walks through the field of starfish, picks up another one, and the man stops her. And he says to her, how can this possibly make a difference? And she says, well, it makes a difference to this one. And she throws that one in the ocean. Right. That's the attitude people need to have. Don't look at the fact that you'll never get to all the starfish. Look at every single one you picked up as progress and as significance. So the jam lady story, and I can't believe you found that one too, you are tackling a huge problem, right, in metabolic diseases.
Sure.
You guys are tackling but one life at a time, right? And one disease and one symptom, and every single thing you do completely matters. That starfish was somebody's family, right, who you just made their entire quality of life or saved a life better. Every one of them matters on your way to the much bigger goal. And what we want people to do is pick one problem in your neighborhood and solve that. That's the place to start. So this story was I was doing this thing in Egypt with a bunch of Egyptian women. And at lunch, these people don't have any money, and it's not my event. It was put on by the government, so they didn't provide lunch. But I noticed a bunch of women eating the same sandwich. And I said, why do you all have the same sandwich? And they said, well, because we all stop at the same lady's house to get sandwiches on the way. And I said, why? And they said, she lives in our neighborhood. She makes homemade jam, and it's the best thing ever. And I said, so you all eat her jam sandwiches? And they said, yes, she's here in the class. So I go over and talk to her. By the way, I never ask people, even in hiring, I never start by saying, talking about your resume. I always just ask people, what's your dream? What is something before you die you have to do? And let's see if your career at Quest can help you do that, right? You make that a two-way thing. So I asked her, what's your dream? And she said, before I die, she said, there are 20 families in my neighborhood. And she said, one has a job. She said, I want to get the other 19 women somehow gainfully employed before my day is over. That was her dream. That's not a huge dream, it's a neighborhood dream. But it's so important because if one person did that in every neighborhood, we would get somewhere. So I said, by the way, everyone loves your jam. I'll skip the details in the interest of time, but what we did with the jam lady was we got her a micro loan. In the micro loan, she bought an empty little house, kind of garage that was down the street from her.
Just so people know how much.
That's like $200 to launch her entire company.
Tiny.
So in those environments. So with this micro loan, she bought this facility. She bought some equipment. She started a jam making factory, basically. We got her labels. We went out on crowdsourcing. We got some university kids in Cairo to create her logos. We got some other students down the street from her in Cairo to create a website and to do online ordering. We created the Jam Lady. She now employs not only all 19 of those women, but about 50 women in all the surrounding neighborhoods. Every morning, they go to the empty house, they have an assembly line, they create jars of jam, they stick labels on it that say the Jam Lady, they take orders off the internet, okay? And they ship jam everywhere. Every one of them is feeding their family, buying clothing, and sending their kids to school because they rallied around one person to solve one problem in one neighborhood. The Jam Lady was the example for me of what you really should do. We're not all gonna start the next Facebook. Forget it. Go do something somewhere local to you that affects the lives around you, and that's the way we can build from the ground up. Thank you.
Honestly.
Thank you.
That's such a powerful story.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing it up.
Man, when I came across it, I was like, this is one of the most beautiful stories I've ever heard. And it's beautiful. So I consider myself a deeply spiritual man, but I never talk about spirituality because I think it denies that there's two sides to people's personality. If you're gonna really be successful, like I'll even throw Mother Teresa into this mix, there's gotta be a side of you that's got enough drive to be aggressive, to be assertive, to go and keep doing it against all odds. Even when you're soft-spoken and genteel, like there's just a perseverance of spirit. And oftentimes that gets lost in discussions of spirituality. But I felt like in the Jam Lady story was such this tale of a woman who was, like, she knew what her dream was, right? There was a clarity of purpose. And her clarity of purpose was matched with the desire and willingness to pick up the shovel and dig. And I know that launching that jam business is not easy. Getting those labels on the jars, producing the jams, sourcing the berries, I mean, all that takes work. And so this isn't a tale of 50 women sitting around like laughing and having a glass of wine every day. They're like, I'm going to guess, filled with joy and passion born of the hard work that they're willing to do and seeing the results of their labors and finding a sense of framework happiness in that and real pride of a job well done. So
absolutely, that's what drives them every single day to get up. And that is so important. You know, what bothers me in this country is we have that phrase, thank God it's Friday. And we have the phrase, thank God it's Friday, because we hate our job. Right? And I always used to listen to that and say, why don't you just go find one you like, right? So I don't gotta go to work, I get to go to work.
Right.
I get to be with you guys, I get to be around people I like, I get to work on a mission, like, eradicating metabolic diseases.
Right.
I get to work on something that actually matters to me. So you should be powered by being in an environment, being in a culture where you actually can't wait to get to work every day. And I know you've achieved that here. I've met amazing people in your organization. Your people met me at 2:30 a.m. in the airport with cheerleading outfits and just saying, thank you so much for spending time with us. That attitude, that energy is what creates success. Yeah. When everybody has the energy that I am in the place I want to be doing the thing I want to do, you can't wait to get to work and you do a lot more. So yes, those women love getting up and going. They get their kids off to school and they go to that house and they love their days. It's hard to send them home.
All right, let's talk a little bit about framework happiness. You're good friends with Evander Holyfield, and I love his story about, I do 300 reps, not 299. Tell us that story, it's phenomenal.
Sure, that was a another epiphany moment for me in my life about commitment. So Evander was training for a fight, and I was at his place and just spotting. He was doing this exercise that he does that's inhuman, right? If you've ever seen this man, right? He's in fact, the Mayo Clinic called him one of the fittest human beings they've ever seen.
Wow.
Right? But he earns that. His fitness and nutrition regime is what he cares about every day of his life. He keeps telling me that, this is the funny story, now he's going to get mad at me. He has stairs near his bathtub. And I said, why do you have stairs in your bathtub? You're one of the most fittest people ever. And he said, because I figure to live till about 140. And he said, I won't be able to get in the bath when I'm 125. But I'm working on a fitness plan to live that long. So it's just kind of a funny story.
I respect that.
He's doing this exercise.
I don't know why so early, but you know, 160.
He does 300 reps of this exercise. Most people on the planet could do it twice. You would snap in half and they'd get 2 stretchers. Okay? So it's insane to do 300 reps of this. And I'm just counting. And I said 299, 300. And Evander said, Jeff, was that 299 or 300? And I said, it was 300. And he said, was it 299 or 300? And I said, it was 300. And he went back down and did one more rep with all the sweat and the muscles and everything else. And he said, I think that was only 299. And I did this. I rolled my eyes. Like, really? There's no human being on the planet that can do this. You do it every day, 300 times. What's the difference? And I rolled my eyes. When Evander came back up, he said, look at me. And I can tell you guys, I remember thinking, well, that was a short life. It was a good one, but it's going to end in a sweaty gym. And he said, look at me. But what he said next affected me every day of the rest of my life since then. He looked me in the eye and he said, the difference between 299 and 300 is the difference between heavyweight champion of the world and every other boxer. And then he got up and walked away. I froze. I had goosebumps. I closed my eyes and I stood there for 10 minutes to let that go into my soul, into my spirit, not just my ears, right? Because that is absolutely the truth. If you, whatever you set out to do in life, if 299 is good enough on Tuesday, guess what happens Wednesday? 298 is almost 299. And on Thursday, 297 is almost 298. And you know what's happening down the street? Tom's doing 300 and he's going to kick your butt, okay? And so I went back to my office and I wrote on the wall 299 with the red slash through it. No 299s in this office. And one night I was sitting at work and I finished a proposal. And it was midnight, and I was there alone. I said, I worked really hard on this. This is a good proposal. And I said, this proposal will win this bid. Okay? And I got up, turned the lights off, started walking out, and I walked under my own sign, no 299s. And I stopped, and I looked at that. And I'm going to challenge you guys to do the same thing every day, everything you do in your life. And I said, is this 299 or 300? Did I bring my best to work today, or did I cut a corner because 299 is good enough? Right? Because greatness is never achieved by cutting corners. So I went back, took my shoes off, poured some coffee, and stayed till 4:30 in the morning. When I was finished with that proposal, I said, this is 300. This is my best work. This is what I get up for every morning. And 2 weeks later, I get a call from the customer. And they said an amazing thing. They said, not only is this the single best proposal we've ever received, but they said something that just blew me away. They said, we just wanted to tell you we did something we've never done before. I said, what? And they said, we were at an industry conference with all of our competitors. And they said, we just told our competitors, just buy from those guys. Don't even waste your time with the proposal process. You're never going to find better. Just buy from them. I got 5 contracts out of one proposal from 4 competitors because I stayed to deliver 300 and not 299. There are no shortcuts to success. When you commit to 300, finish it. Those are the people that achieve amazing things. That is how you got this company this far in only this short number of years.
I couldn't end on a better note. Jeff, that was so phenomenal. You are one of the most powerful storytellers I've ever come across. Everyone amazingly useful. Guys, I really hope that you were paying attention to that. It was absolutely incredible. You just don't come across people like this very often that really understand the humanity of business and understand what it takes to find your purpose in life. The actual how of finding your purpose in life. Don't forget to send the 10 texts. Figure out what it is that you're best at. Rewatch this one. If you haven't already, download the podcast, which you can get on iTunes, and you can listen to that bad boy at 3x. Hey, and I sound so much smarter at 3x. So please do me a favor, go there. That's how I wish I sounded. Evander Holyfield, if you're watching, please be gentle with this man because he is he is a national treasure, and I can't see that brain getting battered around. Guys, it's a weekly show. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe. You can find us also at InsideQuest.com or at InsideQuest on social channels. I'm at Tom Bilyeu. And to all of you that have been writing to me, thanking me for the show and telling me the changes that it's brought about in your life, whether it's going to the gym, reading a new book, just feeling more empowered, thank you very much. I read them all. I'm incredibly moved by them. They're the reason that I do the show and keep busting my ass to bring people like this to the table. And a quick shout out to the crew here, everybody that puts this together and brings these people on. This man came in last night at 2:30 a.m., but he didn't give up. He came because he always does 300. Do 300, everybody. We will see you next week. Take care. Thank you guys.